Arab prince saw the maid's daughter throw away his multi-million-dollar contract. Then she explained why the morning sun cast golden rays through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the royal business wing, illuminating the mahogany conference table where 12 men in expensive suits sat waiting. Prince Rashid al-Zahrani stood at the head of the room, his white thobe pristine and pressed, the gold trim of his ceremonial mishla catching the light as he moved. At 32, he was the youngest prince to head the kingdom's Economic Development Council, a position he had earned through intelligence, determination, and an unwavering commitment to transforming his nation's future. Today marked the culmination of 18 months of negotiations. The Meridian Global Corporation, a European conglomerate with tentacles reaching across 3 continents, had agreed to a partnership worth $2.3 billion. The deal would bring advanced technology, create thousands of jobs, and position the kingdom as a leader in renewable energy across the Middle East. Cameras lined the back wall, ready to broadcast this historic moment to the nation. "Your Highness," said Marcus Volrath, Meridian's silver-haired CEO, extending his hand across the table. "This is truly a momentous occasion. Our partnership will reshape the economic landscape of the entire region." Prince Rashid smiled diplomatically, placing his right hand over his heart before accepting the handshake, a gesture of respect deeply rooted in his culture. "Indeed, Mr. Volrath, my father the king sends his blessings on this venture. The future prosperity of our people depends on partnerships like these." The prince's chief advisor, Hassan al-Mansur, a man whose weathered face spoke of decades serving the royal family, placed the leather-bound contract on the table. 57 pages of legal text reviewed by the kingdom's top attorneys, blessed by the Economic Council, and approved by the king himself. Prince Rashid reached for his gold fountain pen, the same one his grandfather had used to sign the kingdom's first oil agreement 70 years ago. The executives leaned forward. Camera shutters clicked. Hassan smiled with satisfaction. Then the door burst open. Every head turned. 2 royal guards stood frozen in the doorway, their faces showing confusion and alarm. Between them, pushing past their outstretched arms, was a girl, no more than 17, wearing a simple gray uniform dress and white headscarf that marked her as palace service staff. Her name badge read Amira. Her eyes were wide with fear, but her hands gripped a manila folder with such intensity that her knuckles had turned white. She rushed toward the table, her worn shoes squeaking against the marble floor. "Your Highness, please," she gasped. "You cannot sign that." The room erupted. "Security!" someone shouted. Marcus Volrath's face turned crimson. "What is the meaning of this? This is a closed session." The guards advanced, but Prince Rashid raised his hand, his expression unreadable. The room fell silent, though tension crackled like electricity in the air. He studied the girl carefully. He recognized her vaguely, the daughter of Fatima, one of the palace cleaners. The girl who worked part-time in the archives, organizing old documents and filing records. What was her name? Amira. Yes, Amira. "Explain yourself," Prince Rashid said calmly, though his jaw tightened. "You have 30 seconds before I have you removed and your mother dismissed from palace service." Amira's hands trembled, but she stepped forward and placed the folder on the table. She opened it with shaking fingers, revealing page after page of printed documents, bank statements, transaction records, corporate registries. photographs of documents that appeared decades old. "The company you're about to sign with," she began, her voice quavering but growing stronger with each word, "isn't what it claims to be. Meridian Global Corporation is a shell entity. It was established only 3 years ago, using funds traced back to the collapsed Artemis Financial Group, the same organization that was exposed for laundering money through 12 countries and financing illegal weapons trades." Marcus Vollrath shot to his feet. "This is absurd, preposterous. Your Highness, this child is clearly delusional or has been planted by our competitors to sabotage—" "Silence!" Prince Rashid commanded, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. He fixed his gaze on Amira. "Continue." Amira spread out several documents, her fingers moving with surprising confidence now. "I was filing old financial records in the palace archives 2 weeks ago. Documents from the 2019 banking crisis investigation. I noticed these account numbers." She pointed to a series of figures on a yellowed page. "They matched exactly with the routing codes I saw on a memo that was accidentally filed with the archive materials. That memo was from Meridian Global." She pulled out another document. "I started cross-referencing. These offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Cyprus, they all connect back to the same parent company, Artemis Financial. When that company collapsed, the board members didn't face justice. They rebranded. They created new entities. Meridian Global is one of them." Hassan al-Mansur reached for the documents, his face pale. "Your Highness, our legal team reviewed Meridian's credentials thoroughly. This is real," Amira interrupted, which made several executives gasp at her audacity to interrupt the prince's chief advisor. "I have transaction records showing that Meridian has been moving money through accounts tied to sanctioned entities. If you sign this contract, Your Highness, when the international banking regulators discover this connection, and they will, because 3 investigative journalists in Europe are already following the trail, your kingdom will be implicated. The scandal won't just destroy this deal. It will destroy your reputation, your father's legacy, everything you've built." Prince Rashid's eyes narrowed. He picked up one of the documents, studying the numbers, the dates, the connections Amira had outlined. "And how," he asked slowly, "did a 17-year-old archive clerk uncover what a team of highly paid attorneys and financial investigators missed?" Amira's cheeks flushed. She looked down. I remember things, Your Highness. Numbers, names, dates. When I see them, they stay in my mind. I can't forget them. I saw those account numbers in the 2019 files, and when I saw them again in the Meridian documents, I knew they were the same. So I started searching. The palace archives go back decades. They contain records of every major financial investigation the kingdom has ever conducted. The information was there. It just needed someone to connect it. Marcus Vollrath slammed his hand on the table. "This is character assassination. We have legal recourse. You cannot make such accusations without proof." "The proof is in front of you," Amira said quietly, meeting his gaze with unexpected courage. "I have copies of everything, transaction records, corporate registration documents showing the shell company network, even communications between Meridian board members and known money launderers. I found them all in various archives, some in the palace, some in public business registries that I accessed through the palace library computers." For a long moment, Prince Rashid said nothing. He picked up document after document, his trained eye scanning the evidence. Hassan leaned over his shoulder, and gradually the advisor's expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. "Your Highness," Hassan whispered, "these account numbers. I recognize them from the Artemis investigation. If she's right—" "She is right," Prince Rashid said coldly. He looked up at Marcus Volrath, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mr. Volrath, you and your associates will remain here while my security team contacts international financial regulators. If what this young woman says is true, you have attempted to defraud the kingdom and implicate us in international money laundering." Marcus's face went from red to white. "Your Highness, I assure you, this is a misunderstanding." "Guards!" Prince Rashid called. Immediately, 6 armed men entered the room. "Escort these gentlemen to the secure conference room. No one leaves this building until we verify these claims." As the Meridian executives were led away, Marcus Volrath protesting loudly, the others silent with shock, Prince Rashid turned to Hassan. "Get the Attorney General on the phone. I want our best forensic accountants on this immediately, and contact the International Banking Commission." Then he looked at Amira, who stood frozen, seeming to realize for the first time what she had just done. The gravity of interrupting a royal proceeding. The potential consequences if she had been wrong. "Come with me," he said. Prince Rashid led Amira to a smaller office adjacent to the conference room, dismissing everyone else with a wave of his hand. The door closed, and they were alone. He gestured to a chair, and she sat, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes on the floor. "Look at me," he commanded. She raised her gaze. Up close he could see she was terrified, but beneath the fear was something else, a fierce intelligence, a determination that reminded him of his own drive. "What you did," he said slowly, "was either the bravest or most foolish act I have ever witnessed. You do understand that if you are wrong, you will have destroyed a multi-billion-dollar deal, created an international incident, and humiliated the kingdom on global television." "Yes, Your Highness," she whispered. "You also disrupted a formal royal proceeding. By protocol, that alone could see you and your family expelled from palace grounds." "I know, Your Highness." "Then why?" His voice rose slightly. "Why did you risk everything? Your mother's job? Your own future? Why not simply submit your findings through proper channels?" Amira took a shaky breath. "Because I tried, Your Highness. 5 days ago, I brought my research to the palace administrative office. They laughed at me. They said I was a foolish girl who didn't understand business. Yesterday, I tried to contact someone in the Economic Council. I was told that the contract had already been reviewed and approved by experts, and that I should return to my filing duties and stop wasting everyone's time." Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. "But I knew I was right, Your Highness. I've triple-checked everything. I couldn't let you sign that contract. I couldn't watch you walk into a trap that would hurt you, hurt the king, hurt our kingdom. So yes, I broke protocol. I knew there would be consequences, but some things are more important than protocol." Prince Rashid studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his formal demeanor. "You have your mother's stubbornness. Fatima once stopped a royal motorcade because she saw a mechanical fault the engineers had missed. Saved my uncle's life." Amira blinked in surprise. I didn't know that." "It was before you were born. Your mother received a commendation, but she refused any reward. She said she was simply doing what was right." He paused. "It seems courage runs in your family." Before Amira could respond, there was a knock at the door. Hassan entered, his face grave. "Your Highness, we've made preliminary contact with the European Banking Authority. They've confirmed that Meridian Global is currently under investigation for suspicious financial activities. They were about to issue an international alert." Prince Rashid's expression hardened. So, she was right. "Completely right, Your Highness. If we had signed that contract, the kingdom would have been implicated within weeks. The scandal would have been—" Hassan trailed off, shaking his head. "Catastrophic." The prince stood and walked to the window, looking out over the palace gardens. "Cancel a press conference. Issue a statement that the deal is under review. And Hassan," he turned back, "I want a full investigation into why our legal team and financial advisors missed what a 17-year-old found in our own archives." "Of course, Your Highness." After Hassan left, Prince Rashid turned to Amira. "You saved the kingdom a fortune today. More importantly, you saved our reputation. That is worth more than any amount of money." "I'm just glad I could help, Your Highness," Amira said softly. "You did more than help. You prevented a disaster." He sat down across from her. "Tell me about this gift of yours, this memory." Amira hesitated. "I don't know how to explain it, Your Highness. I've always been this way. When I see something, numbers, dates, names, even images, they stay in my mind. I can recall them perfectly, even years later. At school, the teachers thought I was cheating because I could remember everything from lectures and textbooks. My mother says it's a blessing from God." "Your mother is wise." Prince Rashid was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Amira, what are your plans for the future? What do you wish to study?" She looked surprised by the question. I would like to continue my education, Your Highness, but my family cannot afford university. I had hoped to work in the palace archives permanently, perhaps train as a record specialist." "Filing papers?" Prince Rashid said thoughtfully. "A worthy profession, but a waste of your talents. What would you study if money were not an obstacle?" "Law," Amira said immediately, then seemed embarrassed by her own boldness. "I know it's ambitious, but I've always been fascinated by law, how it structures society, how it protects people, how it can be used for justice or manipulated for corruption. When I was researching Meridian's activities, I had to understand international finance law, corporate law, regulatory frameworks, and I loved it, every moment of it." Prince Rashid smiled. "Then you shall study law." Amira's eyes widened. "Your Highness? From this day forward, your education is my personal responsibility. You will attend the finest university, here or abroad, your choice, all expenses paid. In return, I ask only that you use your gifts to serve justice and truth as you did today." Tears spilled down Amira's cheeks. "Your Highness, I cannot accept such—" "You can, and you will," he said firmly but kindly. "Consider it the kingdom's investment in its future. And Amira?" His expression grew serious. "Your mother must never know the real reason for this scholarship. As far as anyone is concerned, you won a merit-based award through the Royal Education Foundation. We cannot have anyone know that today's incident occurred. The fewer people who know about how close we came to disaster, the better. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Highness," she whispered, overwhelmed. "Good. Hassan will arrange everything. You will finish your secondary education with private tutors, then begin university next year." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "One more thing, Amira. Thank you. You showed courage and integrity when it mattered most. The kingdom needs more people like you." As Amira left the office, her mind reeling from the sudden transformation of her fate, she didn't see the way Prince Rashid watched her go, a thoughtful expression on his face. He had recognized something in her, a quality that transcended education or social status, a quality that couldn't be taught, the courage to do what was right, regardless of the cost. 8 years later, the law firm of Al-Hashimi and Partners occupied the 42nd floor of the gleaming Emirates Tower in the heart of the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, a forest of glass and steel that had tripled in size over the past decade. Amira al-Sayed stood at those windows, looking out at the city lights as evening fell, a file folder in her hands. At 25, she had become one of the youngest senior associates at the most prestigious law firm in the region. Her specialty was international corporate law and financial regulation, fields where her extraordinary memory gave her an almost supernatural advantage. She could recall every case precedent, every clause of every treaty, every detail of every contract she had ever read. In courtrooms, she was formidable. Opposing counsel had learned to fear her quiet intensity and her ability to pull obscure legal references from memory with perfect accuracy. She had studied at Oxford, graduated top of her class, completed internships with international courts, and returned home with a reputation that preceded her. She took cases others considered impossible: corporate fraud, financial crimes, corruption. She had a perfect record, 23 cases, 23 victories. But none of that mattered now, because the case file in her hands changed everything. "Amira?" Her colleague Samir appeared at her elbow. "The partners want to know if you've made your decision." She didn't turn around. "What decision is there to make, Samir? I can't take this case." "You can't not take it," Samir countered. "You're the best we have. If anyone can win this, it's you." "Samir, they're accusing Prince Rashid of embezzling $800 million in state funds. The evidence is overwhelming: 27 witnesses, financial records, testimony from his own staff. His chief advisor, Hassan al-Mansour, has already pleaded guilty and is testifying against him." She finally turned to face him. "How am I supposed to defend that?" "You've won cases with worse evidence," Samir pointed out. "That's not the point." Amira set the folder down on a nearby desk. "Prince Rashid. He changed my life. He gave me everything. How can I defend him if he's actually guilty? How can I stand in court and protect a corrupt man even if he once helped me? And what if he's innocent?" Amira laughed bitterly. "Have you read the evidence? It's damning." "Evidence can be manufactured. You of all people should know that." Samir's expression was serious. "Look, I know you have a history with the prince. The whole firm knows he sponsored your education. But that's exactly why you need to take this case. You understand how he thinks. You know his character. You're the only one who can see what others might miss." Amira shook her head. "The partners should assign this to someone else, someone without complications." "The prince requested you specifically." She froze. "What?" "He's entitled to choose his defense counsel. He asked for you by name. Only you." Samir handed her another folder, thicker than the first. "These are his personal files. He's waived attorney-client privilege for you, full access to everything. He said, and I quote, If Amira al-Sayed believes I am guilty after reviewing the evidence, then I will accept whatever judgment comes. But if she agrees to defend me, I will know that truth still has a chance." Amira took the folder with numb hands. "When is the preliminary hearing?" "3 days." "That's impossible. This case has thousands of pages of evidence, hundreds of—" "For anyone else, yes. But you have a gift, remember?" Samir squeezed her shoulder. "Read it tonight, all of it, then decide." "But Amira, the kingdom is watching. The world is watching. If Prince Rashid goes down, he takes a lot of good people with him, a lot of good programs. All the reform work he's done over the past 8 years, education, women's rights, economic development, all of it will be tainted by scandal." After Samir left, Amira sat down at her desk, turned on the lamp, and opened the prince's personal file. She began to read. She read through the night, page after page of financial records, emails, meeting minutes, testimony transcripts. The allegations were severe. Prince Rashid had allegedly created a network of shell companies to siphon money from state development projects. The funds had supposedly been transferred to offshore accounts in his name. Hassan al-Mansur, his trusted advisor of 30 years, had confessed to facilitating the transfers and provided detailed testimony about how the scheme operated. The evidence was indeed overwhelming. Too overwhelming. As dawn broke over the city, Amira sat back in her chair, exhausted, but with her mind racing. Something was wrong. The pieces fit together too perfectly. Financial crimes of this magnitude were always messy. There were always inconsistencies, loose ends, unexplained details. But this case was airtight, almost as if someone had constructed it deliberately to be airtight. She pulled out her laptop and began cross-referencing the financial records with her own memory of corporate structures and banking regulations. One transaction caught her eye, a transfer of $30 million to an account in Luxembourg, allegedly authorized by Prince Rashid himself. But the date bothered her, October 14th, 3 years ago. She remembered that date. Why? Then it clicked. October 14th was the day Prince Rashid had been in Malaysia for the Southeast Asian Economic Summit. She had written a paper about that summit for her international law class at Oxford. The prince had given the keynote address. She remembered reading the news coverage, feeling proud that the man who had changed her life was representing the kingdom so well on the world stage. If Prince Rashid was in Malaysia, how did he authorize a transaction that, according to the evidence, required his physical presence at the Royal Treasury Office to verify via biometric identification? Amira pulled up more transactions, cross-referenced more dates, and slowly a pattern emerged. 7 of the largest transfers had occurred on dates when Prince Rashid was out of the country, yet the evidence claimed he had personally authorized them using biometric verification systems that required his physical presence. It was a small discrepancy. Most lawyers would overlook it or assume the dates were slightly wrong. But Amira's memory was perfect. She knew those dates were correct, which meant someone had falsified the biometric records. She grabbed her phone and called Samir, not caring that it was 6 in the morning. "I'm taking the case," she said when he answered groggily. "Tell the partners I'm taking it, but I need complete access to the prosecution's evidence, every document, every file, and I need it today." "Amira, what did you find?" "The beginning of the truth," she said, "or maybe the end of a very elaborate lie." The preliminary hearing took place in the Royal Court of Justice, a marble and glass building that represented the kingdom's commitment to transparent governance. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, diplomats, royal family members, and citizens who had come to witness the fall of a prince or the vindication of a reformer, depending on their perspective. Prince Rashid sat at the defense table, wearing a simple gray suit instead of his traditional royal attire. It was a strategic choice, Amira knew. He wanted to face these charges as a man, not a prince. He looked older than she remembered, lines of stress around his eyes, gray touching his temples. But his bearing was still proud, his gaze steady. When Amira entered the courtroom and took her seat beside him, he smiled slightly. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I haven't decided yet if you deserve my help," she replied coolly, opening her briefcase. "But I have decided that the truth deserves to be heard. That's all I ask." The judge entered, Chief Justice Hamad al-Qasimi, known for his harsh sentencing and intolerance for corruption. The prosecution team was led by Director of Public Prosecutions, Khalid al-Rahman, a man who had built his career on high-profile convictions. He stood and addressed the court with confidence. "Your Honor, the evidence against Prince Rashid al-Zahrani is clear and overwhelming. Over $800 million in state funds were systematically stolen through a network of shell companies. His own chief advisor has confessed and provided detailed testimony. We have financial records, biometric verification of transactions, testimony from 17 government officials, and communications that directly implicate the defendant. The people demand justice." Amira stood. "Your Honor, the defense maintains that Prince Rashid is innocent of all charges. The evidence, while superficially compelling, contains significant irregularities that point to a coordinated frame-up. We request a full trial where we can present our findings." Director Khalid smiled condescendingly. "The defense can request whatever it likes, but the facts speak for themselves. Perhaps Ms. Al-Sayed's personal connection to the defendant has clouded her judgment. And perhaps the prosecution's desire for a high-profile conviction has clouded theirs," Amira shot back. "Your Honor, I have identified at least 7 transactions that allegedly bear the prince's biometric authorization that occurred when he was physically out of the country. That's not an irregularity. That's evidence of falsification." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Director Khalid's smile faltered. "Your Honor, the defense is grasping at straws." "I have documentation," Amira interrupted, handing a folder to the bailiff. "Flight records, diplomatic logs, photographs from international summits, all proving that Prince Rashid could not have been where the prosecution claims he was when authorizing these transactions." Judge al-Qasimi examined the documents, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he looked up. "The defense has raised a legitimate question. This court will proceed to a full trial. Prosecution, you will provide the defense with complete access to all evidence, including the original biometric verification records. Trial begins in 30 days. As the judge's gavel fell, Amira caught the look on Director Khalid's face. It wasn't concern or surprise. It was something else. Something that looked almost like fear. The 30 days before trial were the most intense of Amira's career. She worked 18-hour days, reviewing thousands of documents, interviewing witnesses, following money trails through labyrinths of shell companies and offshore accounts. Her team expanded to include forensic accountants, digital security experts, and investigators. What they discovered was extraordinary. Hassan al-Mansur, Prince Rashid's trusted advisor for 3 decades, had not acted alone. He had been approached 5 years earlier by a consortium of business interests, wealthy merchants and foreign investors who were threatened by Prince Rashid's reform agenda. The prince's anti-corruption initiatives, his insistence on transparent business practices, and his push to diversify the economy away from dependence on a few powerful families had made him dangerous enemies. They had planned carefully. Over years, they had positioned their people in key government offices, the Royal Treasury, the Department of Economic Development, the Biometric Security Division. They had created the shell companies, established the offshore accounts, and systematically built a paper trail that pointed directly to Prince Rashid. Hassan's role had been crucial. As the prince's chief advisor, he had access to sensitive information, royal schedules, and security protocols. He had used that access to falsify records, authorize transactions using manipulated biometric data, and plant evidence in the prince's private files. But why had Hassan confessed? That question haunted Amira until she found the answer buried in legal documents from a civil case 3 years earlier. Hassan's son had been arrested for drug trafficking in Europe. The charges carried a 20-year sentence. Then, mysteriously, the charges were dropped. Hassan's son walked free. 6 months later, Hassan began cooperating with the conspirators. They had blackmailed him. His confession was the final piece of their plan, devastating testimony from the prince's closest advisor, the man everyone knew and trusted. Amira worked late into the night at the palace archives, where she had first discovered her gift for connecting hidden patterns. She requested access to decades of financial records, looking for anything that might provide context or precedent. It was there, surrounded by boxes of old documents in the same room where she had once worked as a teenage file clerk, that she found the final piece of evidence she needed. A memo from 12 years ago, before Prince Rashid had taken his current position. It outlined a proposed construction deal with a group of foreign investors. The memo was marked with Prince Rashid's personal seal and a handwritten note. Denied. Insufficient transparency in corporate structure. Potential for corruption. Recommend blacklisting all associated entities. The company he had blacklisted? Meridian Global Corporation. Amira's hand shook as she photocopied the memo. The conspiracy suddenly made perfect sense. The same people who had tried to trap the kingdom in a corrupt deal 8 years ago had never forgotten that Prince Rashid had been the one to stop them. This wasn't just about money or power. It was revenge. And somehow they had never realized that the teenage girl who had exposed their scheme had grown up to become the lawyer who would expose their second attempt. The trial lasted 6 weeks and became the most watched legal proceeding in the kingdom's modern history. Every day, the courtroom was packed. Every night, news channels analyzed the day's testimony. Amira was brilliant. She methodically dismantled the prosecution's case, witness by witness, document by document. She brought in biometric security experts who testified that the authorization records had been digitally manipulated. She presented flight records and diplomatic documentation proving Prince Rashid had been out of the country during key transactions. She called banking officials who confirmed that the shell company structures matched patterns used by known international fraud networks. But the prosecution had Hassan al-Mansur, and his testimony was damaging. On the witness stand, he appeared broken, remorseful, a man confessing his sins and implicating his former master. He described in detail how Prince Rashid had allegedly ordered him to create the shell companies, how he had watched the prince transfer funds to offshore accounts, how he had been threatened when he tried to refuse. "I was weak," Hassan said, tears streaming down his face. "I should have refused. I should have reported him. But he is a prince, and I am just an old man. I feared for my life, for my family." When Amira cross-examined him, the courtroom was silent. "Mr. Al-Mansur," she began quietly, "you've served the royal family for 35 years, correct?" "Yes." "In all that time, did Prince Rashid ever threaten you before?" "No, but—" "In fact, when your son was arrested in Europe 3 years ago, didn't Prince Rashid personally call the embassy to ensure your son received proper legal representation?" Hassan hesitated. "Yes." "And when your wife fell ill, didn't Prince Rashid arrange for her treatment at the best hospital in the kingdom at his personal expense?" "Yes." So this man, who had shown you nothing but kindness and loyalty for decades, suddenly became a criminal mastermind who threatened to harm you and your family. "People change," Hassan said weakly. Amira pulled out a document. "Mr. Al-Mansur, do you recognize this?" Hassan's face went pale. I'm not sure." "It's a court document from the Netherlands. It shows that charges against your son were mysteriously dropped 3 years ago, just weeks before you began authorizing the suspicious transactions you've attributed to Prince Rashid." She stepped closer to the witness stand. "Who really got your son released, Mr. Al-Mansur? Who offered you that deal?" I can't. Was it the same people who helped you falsify the biometric records? The same people who planted evidence in Prince Rashid's files? The same people who promised to protect your son if you testified against the prince? "Objection!" Director Khalid was on his feet. "The defense is harassing the witness with baseless accusations." "These accusations are not baseless," Amira countered, holding up more documents. "I have evidence linking Mr. Al-Mansur's son's legal case to 3 members of the Meridian Global Corporation Board, the same corporation that attempted to defraud this kingdom 8 years ago, the same corporation that Prince Rashid personally blocked from doing business here. This isn't about corruption, Your Honor. This is about revenge." The courtroom erupted. Judge Al-Qasimi banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" Hassan al-Mansur broke down on the witness stand. "They said they would hurt my family," he sobbed. "They said my son would be killed if I didn't cooperate. I had no choice. I had no choice." "Who threatened you?" Amira pressed. "Give me names, Mr. Al-Mansur. Tell the truth." Between sobs, Hassan began to name names: foreign businessmen, corrupt officials, a network that spread across 3 countries. Each name was a thread that, when pulled, unraveled the entire conspiracy. The final day of trial arrived. Amira stood before the court to deliver her closing argument. She looked at Prince Rashid, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Then she turned to address Judge Al-Qasimi and the packed courtroom. "Your Honor, we have heard 6 weeks of testimony. We have examined thousands of documents, and we have uncovered not evidence of Prince Rashid's guilt, but evidence of an elaborate conspiracy to destroy a man whose only crime was fighting corruption too effectively." She walked toward the jury, 12 citizens selected to advise the judge, a recent reform that Prince Rashid himself had implemented. 8 years ago, Prince Rashid stopped a fraudulent deal that would have cost this kingdom billions and destroyed our international reputation. He made powerful enemies that day, enemies who never forgot, enemies who spent years building a false case against him, manipulating evidence, blackmailing witnesses, and corrupting systems. Amira held up the memo she had found in the archives. This document proves that Prince Rashid identified Meridian Global Corporation as corrupt 12 years ago. The same people behind that company are behind this conspiracy. They used Hassan al-Mansur, a good man broken by threats against his family. They infiltrated our government institutions. They falsified biometric records. They created a paper trail designed to be convincing, and they almost succeeded. She paused, letting her words sink in, but they made one mistake. They underestimated the truth, and they underestimated the people who would fight for it. The forensic evidence is clear. The biometric authorizations were falsified. The timeline is clear. Prince Rashid was out of the country during key transactions. The witnesses are clear. Hassan al-Mansur has admitted the conspiracy. The motive is clear: revenge for a failed fraud scheme 8 years ago. Her voice grew stronger. Your Honor, the prosecution has not proven guilt beyond reasonable doubt. They haven't proven guilt at all. What they have proven is that powerful, corrupt forces will go to extraordinary lengths to destroy those who threaten their interests. But today, we have the opportunity to tell them that justice cannot be bought, truth cannot be buried, and a good man's reputation cannot be destroyed by lies, no matter how elaborate. She returned to the defense table and stood beside Prince Rashid. The defense rests, Your Honor. We trust in the wisdom of this court and the power of truth. Judge Al-Qasimi deliberated for 3 hours. When he returned, his expression was grave but clear. This court finds that the prosecution has failed to meet its burden of proof. Moreover, the evidence presented by the defense demonstrates that the charges against Prince Rashid al-Zahrani were the result of a conspiracy to commit fraud and pervert justice. Therefore, this court finds the defendant not guilty of all charges. The courtroom exploded with reactions, cheers from some, gasps from others. Amira closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Prince Rashid placed his hand over his heart in gratitude to the judge, to God, and to her. But Judge Al-Qasimi wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court orders a full investigation into the conspiracy revealed during this trial. Arrest warrants will be issued for all individuals named by Hassan al-Mansur. The corruption that led to these false charges will be rooted out, regardless of who is implicated. As guards moved to take Hassan al-Mansur into custody, though this time with the understanding that his cooperation would be considered in his sentencing, the old advisor looked at Prince Rashid. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. They threatened my son. I didn't know what else to do." Prince Rashid's expression softened slightly. "You should have trusted me, old friend. I would have protected your family. Instead, you nearly destroyed mine." He paused. "But I understand. Fear makes people do terrible things. I will ensure your son is safe. You have my word." Hassan wept as he was led away. Amira stood in the private garden of Prince Rashid's palace residence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She had been summoned here by the prince, a private meeting, no lawyers, no officials, just the two of them. He appeared from the garden path, wearing traditional robes, looking more relaxed than she had seen him in months. "Amira, thank you for coming." "Your Highness." She bowed slightly. "Please, no formalities. Not here, not after what we've been through." He gestured to a seating area beneath an ancient date palm tree. They sat, and a servant appeared with Arabic coffee and dates, the traditional gesture of hospitality. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, sipping the bitter coffee. Then Prince Rashid spoke. 8 years ago, you saved my reputation by preventing a fraudulent deal. This week, you saved it again by revealing a conspiracy. I seem to make a habit of needing rescue from a particular brilliant young woman." Amira smiled. "I was just doing my job, Your Highness." "No," he said seriously. "You went far beyond your job. You could have walked away. The evidence against me was damning. Your career would have been safer defending almost anyone else. But you chose to look deeper. You chose to believe in the truth, even when the truth was hard to find." "I remembered what you did for me," Amira said softly. 8 years ago, I was nobody, a maid's daughter with a strange gift and impossible dreams. You saw value in me when no one else did. You believed in my judgment when I was just a frightened teenager. How could I not fight for you with everything I have?" "You fought for justice," Prince Rashid corrected. "You would have done the same for anyone, because that's who you are. But I'm grateful it was for me." He set down his coffee cup. "I want you to know something. When Hassan's betrayal was revealed, when I realized that someone I trusted for 30 years had helped frame me, I felt broken, not angry, just broken. It made me question everything, who to trust, whether my reforms had meaning, whether I had been foolish to believe in people's better nature." "Your Highness." "Let me finish," he said gently. "Then I watched you work. I saw you pursue the truth with such dedication, such integrity. I saw you refuse to accept the easy explanation. I saw you believe in justice when it would have been simpler to accept injustice. And I realized something. The kingdom has people like you in it, young people who were educated, empowered, and taught to think critically because of the reforms Hassan and I implemented before he was corrupted. You are the proof that the work we did matters, that integrity can be cultivated, that justice is worth fighting for." Amira felt tears prick her eyes. "I learned that from you, Your Highness. That day 8 years ago, when you listened to a terrified girl who had disrupted your business deal instead of having her thrown out immediately, that taught me that truth matters more than protocol, that courage matters more than status. You didn't just change my life with a scholarship. You showed me what kind of person I wanted to become." Prince Rashid smiled. "Then we have taught each other well." They sat quietly for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. Then Amira spoke again. "What will you do now, Your Highness? The conspiracy went deep. Dozens of officials are being investigated. The reforms you've worked for are under scrutiny because people wonder if corruption has infiltrated everything." "I will do what I have always done," Prince Rashid said firmly. "I will continue the work. Yes, some people were corrupted, but more people weren't. The solution to corruption isn't to stop trying to fix it. It's to try harder, to build better systems, to educate more young people like you, to prove that integrity is stronger than greed." He looked at her seriously. "And I hope you will help me. Your Highness, I want you to lead a new anti-corruption commission, young lawyers, investigators, and reformers who will work to expose fraud and protect justice. You've proven you can find the truth even when it's buried deep. The kingdom needs that ability. I need it." Amira was stunned. "Your Highness, I'm not qualified to lead something so important." "You're the most qualified person I know," he countered. "You're brilliant, dedicated, and incorruptible. And you have something that can't be taught, the courage to speak truth to power, even when it costs you everything. That day 8 years ago, you risked your future to save mine. This week, you risked your reputation to defend the truth. The kingdom needs leaders like you." "I need time to think about it," Amira said honestly. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands." Prince Rashid stood, and Amira rose with him. "There's one more thing. Your mother. I'd like to properly thank her for raising such an extraordinary daughter. I've arranged a commendation ceremony in her honor, recognition for decades of loyal service to the royal household." Amira's eyes widened. "Your Highness, she'll be overwhelmed." "Good," he said with a smile. "She deserves to be overwhelmed with gratitude. And Amira, thank you, not just for the trial, for everything, for being the person I believed you could become, for proving that the future of this kingdom is bright because of people like you." As Amira left the palace that evening, walking through the same corridors where she had once worked as a teenage file clerk, she thought about the unlikely journey that had brought her here, from a maid's daughter to a celebrated lawyer, from a frightened girl interrupting a royal proceeding to a woman who had defended a prince and exposed a conspiracy. But more than that, she thought about the power of courage, the courage to speak truth, the courage to pursue justice, the courage to believe in people's better nature even when they disappointed you. 8 years ago, Prince Rashid had believed in her judgment when she was nobody. Today, she had defended his honor because she believed in truth. And tomorrow, she would help him build a kingdom where justice and integrity mattered more than wealth or status. Because some things were more important than protocol. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the cost was high. Truth, justice, and the courage to defend both, no matter who stood against you.